brothers and sisters and brothers, we'll be starting in a few minutes. We have one attorney here, and we're waiting on 3 others. One has been caught up, two have been caught up as it relates to, 3 have been caught up as it relates to trials. And we definitely want to thank you for coming out and being on time, because that's what our intent is, not only to be on time, but to give you the opportunity to ask the questions that you need answers, at least to get a perspective on what your situation might be. And furthermore, with this gathering, whatever information you pick up, we would want you to share it with others. That way, that increases the power of this gathering here. And whatever meetings you might go to, or radio programs you might listen to, whatever information you get, please pass it on. Pass it on to someone. Okay? So we'll get started in about 5 minutes. We'll start with the attorney that we have now in 5 minutes. And then as the other attorneys come in, we'll introduce them to you and they'll join in, okay? All right. And this is being recorded for WBAI and WHCR, Harlem Community Radio, and beyond. So the fact that Brother Cornelius has gathered or begun a series of these gatherings of lawyers called Beyond the Bench is in itself of very high value to our community, because there are not enough lawyers who we have access to, you know, quote, for free, at least on the initial stage, okay? It ain't costing you nothing to sit down with these lawyers and getting some advice or getting some insight. So what Cornelius Ricks has done, and he eventually told me, I'm Brother Leroy from WHCR Harlem Community Radio, and he has, thank you very much, thankful to the Most High for allowing me to be in this position of being a conduit of information to our people on an ongoing basis on Harlem Community Radio for the past, I think it's 23 years or something like that. We just started the program and keep on going as far as we can go. And the good Lord has blessed us to do it week after week after week, and we operate as a team. I'm the primary voice, but not the only voice of the Communicators, which is the program that initiated our introduction to WHCR and Harlem Community Radio. So in just about 3 minutes after we get everything synchronized up here, then we'll start.
Tina. Hey, Tina.
Good evening. Hey, it's a pleasure that everybody came tonight. I mean, it's so many beautiful faces that I see here that I know so well. I'm glad that we're having a great turnout, that we've always had pretty good turnouts, but this nice, real special turnout that I really, truly appreciate. It's like Brother Leroy was speaking about. One of the things that we do, one of the reasons why I created this program was because I thought it was very important to deal with addressing legal issues in the urban communities. Because one of the things that happened to me, which I don't talk about very often, which I think, you know, I need to start talking about a little more, was I was disfranchised. And by being disfranchised, I felt like I had no ins or outs of dealing with addressing my legal issues. And retired Judge Paul Kurtz, this is my attorney. He's been my attorney for 16 years. And one of the things I love so much about him, he's a retired judge from Westchester County. And when I was having the problem with the issues, he left the bench and came to work for me. So the bottom line is what happens and what's so beautiful about it is that he believed in my case, he believed in what I was trying to do, and he was somebody that's always been with me, and somebody that's very special to me. You know, I always thought he was my special white friend, you know what I'm saying? My special white brother, I'm trying to say. So, you know, he's somebody that I truly appreciate. I joke with him all the time about that. And one of the things that we're doing also, by doing this program, we found out that during this program, that we had people that were coming to these programs, half of them didn't know how to sign petitions or put petitions in courts. So we thought it was very important to deal with addressing issues that was very important to the urban community by opening a law library. And one of the things that we're working on as we speak, we got our 501c3, we work on our 501c3, we got the endorsement from the state today, from the state education department approving the project itself, so we move forward. And one of the things we're doing, we're looking at two brownstones to buy on 126th Street. And one of the things that we're doing, we're turning the whole library, turning those two buildings into a library, a law library in the village of Harlem. And by doing so, one of the things that we're doing, we're basically addressing issues where we'll be naming floors in the building after black historians. Each floor will be named as the library as well as / museum. We have the David Dinkins floor, and we're showing the floor of David Dinkins when he became mayor, as well as like a clerk in the court system. We have also the Percy Sutton floor, which would be a small museum. Also, we're showing the relationship between Percy Sutton and Malcolm X. And then we have the David Dinkins floor. I mentioned David Dinkins. We have the Bruce Wright floor as well, and we show his books of what he wrote, Black and White Justice, and also he's a great poet writer as well. I had a chance to meet him as well. He used to always tell me, when I call him on the phone and say, Judge Wright, I got a problem. He says, what's your problem? He says, don't tell me that, don't talk on the phone. He says, come down to my office. I go to his office at 4 o'clock in the morning. I says, why 4 o'clock in the morning? He says, well, white folks already read your case. But the thing is that he was somebody that's very special to me. And by being very special to me, I thought it was somebody that we should name the library after, because it seems that we have so much growth as far as like being black folks of the things that he found the gray areas in the law that was very important to us as black people. So by doing that, Paul Curson is the attorney for the law library. We put together a whole committee as well as a board. And by doing that, we have people like Joe Franklin. We're also working with Judge Matthews. We are working where we're putting these things together to make things happen for black folks in Harlem as well as in the urban community throughout the country. And by doing these panel discussions, Brother Leroy has always been very special to us. He's always gave me an opportunity to come onto his programs, to actually deal with addressing issues that are very important to the urban community. And it's grown to the point where we got the backing we need to move forward, and we're moving forward like on the space shuttle. So by doing these particular projects, I think it's important you understand that we're on a mission, and the mission we got is from God, and God has truly blessed us, and I truly appreciate you coming tonight. Thank you.
All right, so brothers and sisters, once again, thank you very much for coming. And you just heard from Cornelius Ricks, the attorneys who are here is Paul Curson and former Judge J. Stewart Dankberg. He just came, and we're expecting Kenneth Gilbert and Brother Muhammad Bashir. Now, as in our culture, our tradition is to thank the Most High for allowing us the opportunity to be together, and without the Supreme Force and the Supreme Being, we would not be in a position to share information, get information, and pass it on. So that is our opening of thanks to the Most High for you and being in a position to share with you this information. The subject matter tonight is that they'll respond to initially, what is the difference between Negro law and white law? Is that really a reality, or is it our imagination? Is there one law that folks selectively enforce, or are there two or more standards of law here in the United States? After that particular response on the part of the attorneys, then you'll be able to ask questions, and they can pertain to the subject, or more important, to the matters at hand that you are here for to address for yourself personally, or for a relative, or for a friend, or someone you heard about needs some help, they weren't able to come. And so we'll start with Attorney Paul Curson.
Okay, well, first thing I have to say is that I'm very pleased to echo what Cornelius told you. We finally got the approval of the New York State Education Department and the New York State Secretary of State to form the corporation, the Friends of the Charitable Community Law Library of Harlem, Incorporated, the newest not-for-profit corporation in New York State, incorporated yesterday. It took a while because first we wanted to incorporate the Harlem Law Library, and the rules of the education department are you can't incorporate a library until you actually have one. So I said, well, that's not fair. We'd like to build it. Well, then you can have the friends of the charitable community law library. You can raise the money, build it, and then you can apply to be approved as a library, because you have to have a library to be approved as a library. Well, which makes some sense, because you don't want people running around saying they run the library if they don't have one. So then we want to use the word public, and they said, well, you can't use the word public because then you'd be confused with the public library, so that took a little time. But now we're officially approved, which means if we had the money, we could buy a building, we could open a bank account, we could apply to internal revenue to be tax exempt, we could do all these things. And this all came out of this program that Cornelius organized. So he's the president of the company. He's the president of the Friends of the Charitable Community Law Library of Harlem Incorporated. He's the founder. And John Holmes, where's John Holmes? John?
John's in the back.
Oh, well, anyway, he's the vice president. So they are the movers and shakers behind this thing. And Cornelius has picked out a building two buildings on 126th Street he wants to buy. Very ambitious, but I'm committed to helping him do it if we can do it. And I hope all of you are too. The idea is to provide a place where young people can go if they're interested in the law, and we could try and find them some scholarship money so they can go through college and law school, where people have questions, can find a lawyer there to answer their questions, so that the community is improved in that way. And that's the idea. So I hope you'll all get behind the idea that Cornelius had that came out of this very room. First, I'd like... On the other hand, I'd like to apologize for not being here on time. I was helping to make a very poor doctor become a little wealthier by allowing him to stick a small needle into my knee and remove what he called the bad fluid and replace it with good fluid. I then asked him if that was a term he learned in medical school. He said no, but see my receptionist and give her your credit card. But I feel much better, thank you for asking. And come back in 2 weeks and he'll do it again. To get to the topic at hand. First of all, that was first of all. Second of all, whatever. Cornelius has had a dream. It may not have been as grand as Martin Luther King's dream, but the fact that it was not as grand or as all-encompassing does not mean it was not a dream. And it's a dream that seems to be bearing fruition. As the father of the library, the Harlem Law Library, he is deeply and to be commended for doing something which has been long overdue. The ability to have law books accessible to the people, not only of Harlem, East Harlem, West Harlem, North Harlem, South Harlem, further uptown, this area, this neighborhood where I worked, this neighborhood where I walked the streets, this neighborhood where you walk the streets. This neighborhood has had a dire need for a lot of things. I don't know whether having law books is the most important thing, but it certainly is one of the things that was needed. And Cornelius is to be commended for having this dream and for having it begin to bear fruition. May it continue to grow. May the tree of learning bear fruit, and more fruit, and more fruit. Congratulations. I guess I will stop at this point, or should I turn to the topic?
What we want to do is get your reaction to the headline. Yes. Okay. What is the difference between Negro law and white law, if indeed that is an appropriate question for you?
I can answer this, or begin to answer it. I can't answer it. I can begin to supply an answer, or a tentative answer, to part of it. I was employed in the court system of New York for 24 years. I was a law clerk in the civil court and Supreme Court, to a wonderful judge. I was a housing judge.
I was a civil court judge, and I was an acting Supreme Court justice. In New York State, New York City, and mostly in Manhattan. I don't know in New York, certainly not in the courtrooms where I worked, certainly not for the judge for whom I worked, certainly not for his friends whose courtrooms I would drop into occasionally. Was there any difference between law as it applied to Negroes, blacks, Hispanics, green, pink, yellow, you name it, white, orange, purple? Although I understand there are laws against bluish people, but we don't talk about bluish laws. Bad pun. Blue laws, yes. There was no Negro law, there was no white law. There was the law that was applied to the people who came into the courtroom. I had the absolute pleasure, I had the luxury, as a young kid, of being a law clerk to a very keen, intelligent, wonderful human being who sat straight up on the bench. He was 6'4", and sometimes he sat even straighter. He didn't look at the color skin of a person when he was talking about a case. He did criminal law and sentenced people to jail. He didn't look at the color of the skin or think about the color of the skin. I mean, the color of the skin never, absolutely never raised itself in our chambers. The people listening in this room, the people listening on the TV or in the future or whatever, you don't know what went on in chambers between the two of us. Never once. I'll put my hand on 100 Bibles of every religious denomination. Never once was there a discussion that, oh, this is Negro law, or they're black, or they're Hispanic, or they're Chinese, or they're Oriental, or this or that, or they're white. Never. Never, ever was there a law that applied to people who were wealthier as opposed to people who were not wealthy? Absolutely. Those who have money, and you've got to, if you have heard me before, you know I grew up in the Bronx. My father made $20, $30 a day for backbreaking labor. 3 of us had dinner for $5. When the city imposed a tax on food, my father started cursing because it was an extra 10 cents for the meal. It was very difficult. My father was not wealthy. If he had a problem with the law, and luckily he didn't, if he had to go out and pay money for a lawyer, he could not pay $100 an hour or $50 an hour. He just didn't have it. He could not. Is there a difference between the law of people who have money? Yes, because people who have money, people who have real money, I'm talking about millions of dollars, can afford to hire $1,000 an hour, $2,000 an hour lawyer, the finest lawyers that are around. They can hire private investigators to search out and reveal and get items to produce at trial that will hopefully, if there's a criminal case pending, hopefully help to demonstrate a question that the jury will make a decision that you're not guilty, or the prosecution hasn't proven guilt. People who don't have money can't hire these private investigators. The Legal Aid Society and the people who provide free legal assistance to poverty clients, they don't have the bucks to hire private investigators to do 30, 40, 50 hours of digging to find stuff that may be buried somewhere in the sands. And people who are poor will often be told by their attorneys, listen, the prosecution's offering a deal. Plead guilty, you'll get 1 to 3. If you don't plead guilty, this judge here before, he or she is known to impose the harsher sentence. If you're found guilty by a jury, you're going to be doing 10 to 20. Maybe you should think about 1 to 3. Think about it. People plead guilty. Luckily, now, the last couple of years, for serious crimes, there is something called the Innocence Project, which has helped people across the country, even after guilty pleas, because of DNA and other things which have only come recently into the public ability to perceive and to get there at a reasonable cost. People have been found not guilty of crimes that they said they weren't guilty, but they took pleas because they didn't see any other alternative. When you're faced with the possibility of being executed in Texas, in wherever, Arizona, in New Mexico, in New York at some points in time, or plead guilty and you get 10 years in jail, many people say, I'll do the 10, I'll take the 10.
Okay.
Stay alive. Let me shut up. That's it. That's it. Let me turn it back.
All right. Attorney Paul Kershaw, you practice in the criminal court of Westchester.
Well, I was a judge there, but mostly criminal courts of the 5 boroughs.
Okay.
My office is on.
So I'm going to...
So yes, I will address the question. Okay. On the face of it, the law is neutral. That is, there's nothing in the law that says that people should be treated differently depending on their race. In fact, quite the reverse. There are civil rights laws. It's strictly not allowed to treat people differently because of race. But there is a common perception, and I think it is true, that there is white law and Negro law. Well, let me explain how that happened. Well, let me tell you how it happened, at least from my perspective. Okay. I just got to be 60 years old. So I am now officially old. But the best years of my life, yeah, well, I hope so. But the best years of my life, from the time I was 26 till the time I was 45, I was a part-time public defender. Which the way this works is the Legal Aid Society is the main public defender. That's a full-time job. And then there's a whole roster of lawyers to have defendant number 2. That is, if 2 people commit a crime together, 2 or more, Legal aid has number 1, and then somebody off the list, it's called the 18B list because it's a statute that established it. Somebody off the list gets defendant number 2. Okay, so I was on that list. I rose up the list. I started with juvenile delinquents, then I had misdemeanors, then I had felonies, then I had homicides. I was on a homicide panel 14 years. Anyway, what that meant is every morning I got locked in the cell with a young person who committed a crime. You know, 9 times out of 10 it was a black person. So, you know, I got to understand this a lot better than most people, even than most black people. But why should this be? If the law is neutral on its face, why is these the folks who are getting locked up? Okay. So I finally, after 19 years of doing this, I understood why this happened. I call it residual racism. That is, the racism is not now, but Junior, who I was talking to, his father was in jail. He was the victim of the racism, or his grandfather was in jail. And now we get to being a teenager, whether you're white or black or from any different culture. Being a teenager is very hard. Being a teenager without dad is very, very hard. And being a teenager with dad in jail is very, very, very hard. That's where we are now. I think most of the people who get arrested, at least my experience is most of the people who get arrested, dad either is in jail, was in jail, has been in and out of jail, and that is a very, very, very difficult legacy to grow up with. So to me, that's the reason. Now, I stopped being a part-time public defender because 2 of my clients died in jail, and that affected my soul. I had a chance to be a judge. I tried to be a judge. I couldn't do it because 2 of my clients had died in jail, and I knew that anybody I sentenced to jail, especially if I kept being a judge, the odds are somebody would die who was there under my signature. I wasn't living with that, so I quit. I said, quit. It's not my conscience to be part of that. That's how I met Cornelius. I started to take the cases of people who were badly hurt while they were inside. I did a lot of those cases, mostly lost. One, I won a $7 million jury verdict. That was the biggest thing I ever did. It was later reduced, but still, that was something. That was something. That's why when Cornelius said, I want to start the Harlem Law Library, to me, this was the antidote. You know, if young people, and most people in the criminal court, 18 to 25, that's 90% of the people. So that's why it's not completely racist. You don't find older black men getting arrested. See, if it was completely racist, you would. And you don't find women getting arrested that much. So it's not completely racist. That's why I call it residual racism. That's my own understanding of it. So the idea in my mind is if we could stop, you know, you can predict who's going to get arrested, right? If people working in the Harlem Law Library are in contact with police captains and school principals, you could find out, you know, who's a screw-up, you know, who's a Thurgood Marshall had this term, who is a knucklehead? You're a knucklehead? Who is a knucklehead? Yes, and get him in and say, now look, you have to turn yourself around, you know, to turn yourself around. Talk to John Holmes, talk to Cornelius Ricks, you know, a young person, turn yourself around. And we'll have a whole, you know, institution in charge of doing that. That to me is the antidote to the problem. You know, is there, you know, white law and black law? The answer is for a young man who's going in the wrong direction to be straightened out before he gets inside. Because once you get inside, it's a brutal, brutal environment where you get hurt, knifed, stabbed, you know, beat up, and then you come out and, you know, bitter. And then it's a vicious cycle. So we have to break the cycle. That's what I hope the Harlem Law Library is going to do.
All right, thank you. Now, for the audience, the headline or the subject matter, what is the difference between Negro law and white law? That is a provocative title that has been used to actually get a lot of us here, but is not set up for a debate. In other words, you heard the two attorneys, that's their opinion, that's their feeling. What is very critical at this point in time is that there are those of you who have legal questions. Attorney Kershaw, he practices in criminal law, and Judge Lankberg, he has the experience in housing court. So those are the areas that we're able to deal with. Possible personal injury, you may have a question relating to that. Two other lawyers are due here, they're on their way. So, those of you who have questions relating to those areas, don't feel bashful. You can always ask the question in terms of, well, I know my neighbor, so-and-so and so-and-so. It could relate to you, all right? So, don't even worry about, this is family here. Sis, I would like for you to come up and...
I can just stand here and talk very loud.
All right, very good. You can address your question.
What I want to find out is, if you're in a co-op owned by the city, and is it really absolutely all right that they raise your rent from like almost 100% to where they can come in and go raise it from like 1,000 to 2,500, and it's legal for them to actually do that without any repair, any upgrades to make, you know, they keep saying we're going to make it market value, but the building hasn't become market value even though they're trying to raise the rent market value. Hello?
There? Attorney.
Judge.
He was a housing judge. There could be nobody more expert in housing law than my friend J.K.
Thank you. Before, when you're talking about the city ownership, when the government in any of its ways, shapes, or forms gets involved, there are standards of due process that must be met. Before the government can see or approve, before the rent can be raised, or the maintenance, it's a co-op, it's maintenance. Before the maintenance can be raised, there have to be hearings held, there have to be, the board of the co-op must meet, the people who are members of the board must approve X, Y, and Z in terms of improvements. The rent or the maintenance doesn't get raised in and of itself. If you're a renter within the co-op, so you have no say in your maintenance or in your rent, but your rent, the amount you're paying each month is governmentally established, and you still have the right to attend the meetings and to speak about the proposals. They may want to, in the proposal, I'm exaggerating obviously, put in platinum water faucets, only for members of the board. You have a right to object. You have a right, because that will increase everyone's potential payments. Because the amount of income needed to pay for these platinum faucets is going to be higher. If your particular apartment, anyone's particular apartment, is in need of repairs, other than if you own your own apartment, other than a co-op or a condominium, you can ask, you can call 311, which is a wonderful thing that's happened. You can call 311, tell them you need an inspector to come out. They will refer your call to the HPD. They will send an inspector. You will get a report of violations. If the repairs aren't made quickly, then you can go down to the house in court, which is at 111 Center Street on Foley Square. On the second floor is the Landlord-tenant clerk's office. And you start, remember it's called the house in court, an HP action. That's where you sue the landlord and the managing agent to compel repairs to be made.
Right. But if you don't have any of that, if it's just...
You have no violations.
Well, I mean, not really any violations. It's just that it's an old building. It hasn't had any upgrades, anything like that. And I'm a renter, and they're taking my rent from $1,000 or $1,400 to $2,000 or $2,500 in 30-day notice, saying, or if you don't sign the lease, we want you to move.
Who established that rental amount? How was it established?
I guess the board got together.
If you don't know, you don't know. If the board got together and voted it, that's the purpose of the board.
But I'm not on the board.
Then you're a rent. Were you a renter before?
Yes.
You're a rent stabilized tenant?
No.
Because it went co-op under an eviction plan?
No, it went co-op way before
Before you moved in. So you moved in as a non-rent regulated tenant.
Okay.
You moved in as a non-rent, it's like you're a commercial tenant, like you're a store. Okay? There's no rent regulation. Then there hasn't been any rent regulations on stores since the 1920s in New York. Okay? You're a store. Your rent goes from the first of the month to the end of the month.
Correct.
Your rent ends February 28th. I'm the owner of the building. I decide I want your rent raised. I have to serve a term's notice upon you, which in your case means a month's notice, to raise your rent. I have to serve it in a certain way. So if today is February 24th, before the end of February, I have to serve a notice upon you saying, effective April 1st, your rent is going from $1,000 to $30,000. Excuse me. That a court will not approve. There are few, but there are cases that say a raise in rent must be reasonable. $1,000 to $30,000 clearly is not reasonable. But $1,000 to $1,500 could very well be reasonable. If you don't like it, as a store, to $2,500. I'm intentionally not answering that because I am not going to define what is reasonable. There's no line that you can say what is reasonable. What is reasonable to one person is not necessarily reasonable to someone else. If you don't, the old answer is without rent regulation. If you don't, and there's no rent regulation in stores or in your situation, if you don't like it, go somewhere else. You can go to court. You can let them sue you. They'll terminate your tenancy. You'll go to court with you. A judge will be able to let you stay there for up to 6 months, and you can negotiate and try to get around an amount of rent for that period of time that you'll be paying. If you don't agree by an agreement as to that amount, then you can go to trial. The landlord will bring in their experts to say how they figured out it should be $2,500, and you have the right to bring in your own experts. If you can't afford your own expert, we get back to what I said earlier about the economics of justice. You need to bring in a real estate person who say, no, that apartment with these things in them that are from 1918 is not worth $2,500. It's only worth $800. And she's paying $1,000 now, so she's paying more than the apartment really is worth. The landlord's people will come and say, oh, $2,500 is not even close, it's worth $4,000. Then it's for the judge to make a determination. That's what judges do, they make determinations. They'll probably pick some amount between $800 and $2,500. Most probably, they will try to bring the people together to try and settle. But the judges have the ability to give you up to 6 months. What they will usually do is give you 2 or 3. then that you have the opportunity to apply for an additional month, up to the 6 months. But if you don't like what rental they're agreeing to, and you can't negotiate a lower amount, maybe you'll be able to negotiate a lower amount in court, so that you'll have a lease for 2 years instead of at $2,500. Maybe by that point they'll agree to take $1,800, because maybe you've been paying your rent every month on time and you've been a good tenant and have never complained. On the other hand, if you've been calling them every week or every other day and saying, listen, I have not enough hot water, and there's a leak, and there's a this, and there's that. Which you may be correct in doing so, but they will perceive you as being a difficult person. And even if you were to offer them, instead of $2,500, $2,400, they may say, we don't want you, bye. They'll even have to offer you a lease at $2,500 if they perceive you as being a difficult person. That doesn't mean you should not enforce your rights, but it also means without rent regulation, which is something New York City has that very few places in the country have, you're at the mercy of the landlords.
Thank you.
Thank you. Questions from the audience? Sister Juanita and the brother in the glasses will be second.
My question is going to be generic, I believe. I'm going to ask a question about rent regulation apartments and rent stabilized apartments. I'm told that the contract for both of these run out this summer in June.
That is correct.
And what do people do that are rent stabilized and rent regulated?
I am speaking now from what I have heard, so take this as for what it's worth, second and third hand. Every couple of years, the rent regulation statutes, rent control and rent stabilization, expire. Every couple of years, it traditionally has been the Republicans control the state Senate, and the Democrats control the state Assembly, and the Democrats try to keep the rent regulation enforced and get it renewed, and the Republicans try to get it to drop. They wait until there are marches upon Albany by the poorer landlords, and there are many landlords in the city of New York who really are poorer landlords and have problems, big problem, with oil going the way it is and everything else, and because of electricians and everything else is outrageous. There really are poor landlords. That doesn't mean that the Donald Trump buildings are poor, but there are many, many, many poor landlords. And the poor tenants will come marching out and say, listen, we have no money, and the city's welfare is not paying enough money for decent places for people who have absolutely no money. And everyone will come up to Albany, and as it usually is, they'll wait until the last minute, the last day, and they will go behind closed doors, and they will bang heads, and they will try to resolve, and something will come out. Up until now, every time there's been a potential for the rent regulations to end, it has been renewed. I firmly believe it will again be renewed, because I don't believe that the city of New York, all the rent stabilized, all the rent controlled tenants that there are here, will be allowed to flounder without there being rent protection of some kind or another. What will have to be given up, what will have to be gotten, I cannot even begin to guess. But it would seem to me, in humanity's sake, the government and the legislators cannot let the rent regulations in the city of New York go down the drain completely. But remember last time, there was a high rent regulation went from, was it 250,000 down to 200 or 175 a year? Let's assume it went to I think it went to 175. That's not that large an amount of money these days for a family to be, of 3 or 4 people to be earning 175,000. You're deregulated if you have that 2 years in a row. That's very difficult. That can be very, very difficult. My father didn't make it. My father didn't make $9,000 in a year, but that's many, many years ago. That's a few years ago when the dollar was more, well, today a dollar is not as a dollar was then. Exactly.
Okay. Question answered?
The answer, keep informed, speak to your local assemblyman, state senator, city council representative, go to Albany, fight for your rights. Albany is the one who controls your rent.
Okay.
Albany, upstate, where there's snow. Albany. Go fight for your rights. Make sure your voice is heard, not by the people who represent you here, because they're going to vote for rent regulation. Go speak to the people from Schenectady County, from upstate, from Utica County. Tell them that you're really upset, because and get them to come to your way of thinking. Come and have people sit down with them. Invite them to dinner. Bring food up with you. Let them know what Harlem cooking is like.
Thank you very much. Before we go to the brother in the back and to the brother up front, we just want to bring your attention to the back of the room, and we have Sister Antonia with Organo Gold, healthy coffee and tea, and do take a look at the table, and she's at the door. Do take a look at the table. It's a do-for-self enterprise, and if anybody's going out buying Maxwell and blah, 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 poison and blah, 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 poison, then surely you can get something healthy in the back and before you leave. Now, my brother? Bashir just bashed through the door, and Bashir, my brother, right in the house, so we now have three. You heard him Sunday on the radio, and this is his book, Raw Law. And we'll get to him after the two questions. The brother in the back.
Yeah, thank you. My name is Ron again. First, I want to commend the family for creating and going forward with the law library in Harlem, which is very much needed. I have a question for the judge. But before that, I just want to say, I just want to offer my assistance. I'm a certified paralegal. I've been a member of the National Association of Certified Paralegals for the past 20 years. I'm out of work right now. I'm also a formerly incarcerated individual. And I would love to have the opportunity to assist you in any manner that I can. Excellent. That's the first thing. The next thing that I want to say is I have the question for the judges is that NYSHA now is selling public housing to the private industry or private sector, and we're in a battle with them on that. But
you're in a battle. What development?
St. Nicholas House. Well, my question to you is that Community Board 10 has said no, it's not proper, but I'm asking you as a judge, is that a legal stance that can happen, that a public housing can be sold to private industry, or space in the public housing can be sold to private industry? That's my question.
Without having done even a moment of research on the topic, so this is off the top of my head, I have grave problems with the government paying money, erecting housing intended for the public, for poor people, turning around in a year, 2 years, 10, 20, 100 years, and trying to convert that into private housing. I have a great internal problem with that. The use of public funds to create an edifice and then being turned over, bless you, and then being turned over to private hands. I don't care how bad the economics are, and how many billions the city is in short. I just have a deep down ethical problem with that. I don't know what the New York Constitution says. I don't know what case law says across the country. I have a gut feeling it's been tried around the country. I have a problem with I personally have a problem with what went on in Brooklyn, that people were being uprooted from their homes where they've lived to build a sports arena that really could have been built somewhere else without being uprooted. I have a problem with public monies being used for that purpose. That was for the court to determine. And one has to believe, as a lawyer, that the system is, even if I disagree with the result, the system is working. That's my feeling. That's as good as I can answer your question. I have a big problem with that happening. I have a problem. I'll tell you precisely. I have a client, lived with his grandmother up in the Bronx from his birth. She didn't list him on the housing form listing who's living in the house, ever. Now, when he was 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years of age, he didn't have any income, so if she listed him, it would not have affected her rent. She didn't list him. I don't know if it was because she didn't fill out the form or just signed what they put in front of her. He was never listed. But he went to public school across the street. He went to junior high school a couple blocks away. He's got major psychological problems. He's on SSI. He's on he's a recipient of social services. His grandmother died. He went the first of the next month to pay the rent, and they refused it because his grandmother died. He's not listed as a tenant. They then started a lawsuit seeking to evict him. On his own, pro se, he brought an Article 78 proceeding. He asked for a fair hearing as to his ability to succeed to the apartment because he's been living there all his life. He's in his 20s. He's got problems. DSS has a budget allocated to him which includes rent. Now the Housing Authority said, we aren't giving you a hearing. He wasn't even allowed a hearing because he owed rent. So he went to the welfare department. And he said to the welfare department, if my budget includes rent, please issue a check to the Housing Authority. And the DSS says, we're not issuing you rent unless you have a lease in your name. I think the old words are catch-22. The Supreme Court judge who had the pro se Article 78 proceeding happens to be a longtime friend and called me and said, I have this case. I'd like to appoint you as guardian ad litem, guardian for the case, pro bono, which means without fee. Will you do it? I didn't even ask my wife, because she would, of course, say, are you crazy? I am pleased to represent this man. He is a charming, wonderful human being and a delight. And we are involved, locking heads, with 2 city agencies. As recently as today, I was up in the Bronx. And I said to the Housing Authority person, listen, why don't you speak to the DSS and go get the damn money? I don't care if it's budgeted, get the money. He said, oh, that's another agency, that's not our agency. And you speak to the welfare people and they go, show us a lease, we'll pay the rent. If I had hair, I would be pulling it out.
But that's what they do.
Mine is not the reason why. Mine is just to fight for my clients.
Does that, well, the answer is what it is, and I would only add, my brother, that you're going to have to do some research. Not paralegal, but research as to find out and hook up with, there's a brother in the community, not directly in the community, his name is Frank Morales. Frank Morales. And he is a minister, I think he's a Presbyterian or Episcopalian minister. And I can't, you know Sam White? Ask Sam White if he knows how to make contact with Frank Morales. He might give you a perspective on what you're dealing with. A perspective. And out of that can come a direction as to what the people can do. Because our main problem is the lack of knowledge. Okay, once you get the knowledge, then you can, that's light, and you can operate better.
Can I say one more word?
Yes. I asked if I could say one more word. Please get yourself up to your congressman's office. This is something that is for the federal courts. This is not for the state courts. It's not for the city courts. You are talking about big-time problems. This is something that your elected officials should be getting behind you. And I would believe if they still have it, the Legal Aid Society, a federal division should be approached and spoken to, and because this is something that should not be allowed, and this is big time, this is heavy duty stuff, and certainly maybe one of the city's major law firms who do pro bono work on an ongoing basis would be coming in to take part of this. I know I couldn't because I don't have the manpower, I don't have the staff, I'm a single practitioner, but when you have 400 lawyers and a lot of them are young and eager and gung-ho, you could very well do it, but speak with Charlie Wrangler's office, speak to whoever else you need to, get them to move their butts and to get behind and do whatever research is needed and whatever federal court action is needed to do blockage, to get a stay, to get an injunction.
That's what we're doing now. We filed an action in the
Southern District.
yes, for a TRO for timber.
See if you can get groups to come in pro bono that means for the public good. See if you can get other groups to come in. See if you can get the HAR, or see if you can get the NAACP, see if you can get every organized group to come in. The Housing Authority has people all around the city. Go reach out to other projects and let them know and let them speak to their congressman and get their butts behind you. This is not a little nothing. You got a big elephant there.
Yes, I know. Thank you.
Okay, yes.
They're trying to put a charter school
Right.
in that building.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, right in the center.
Right in the center. And they want to build 2 12-story buildings besides that in that little space.
Okay.
I was at the community board when they did the presentation. They showed the chart, what they're going to do. These were the developers.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Okay.
That's
Well,
yeah.
we got the direction as to where we should go. And we're going to this brother with a question, and then we'll go to Attorney Bashir.
My question, Larry Francis, my question is about loan modification for condominium.
Would you speak up?
Actually, my question is about loan modification, mortgage modification, and what are the pros and cons of trying to get one, and how do you go about doing this?
I have some civil cases too. I recently won a case like that. Do you already have a mortgage? Is that it?
Yeah.
Okay, on a co-op or a condominium or a house or what?
House.
House. Okay. Here in Harlem, in the Bronx, somewhere?
Like in Brooklyn.
In Brooklyn. Okay. Okay. This is the way I won this case. I represented a family that fell behind in the mortgage. There was a foreclosure. Is there a foreclosure run against you? Yes. Okay. Foreclosure means the bank says you haven't paid your mortgage payments. Now, what has happened in the last, 10 years is banks, when they lent money, it used to be that the banks had an informal rule that 1/3 of your income should go to be paying the mortgage. And if it was going to, if more than 1/3 of your income was going to go to pay the mortgage, you couldn't afford it, even if you could afford it. That is, even if you had the money, you were going to be a very unhappy person if you spent more than 1/3 of your income on the mortgage, because then you wouldn't have enough money for food, entertainment, for your car, for the bus. You'd be squeezed. So the last 10 years they stopped that. They didn't care. They didn't check. They didn't care. They give a mortgage to anybody, no matter what their income was. Which, on the one hand, it was a good thing if you had income that you weren't reporting. There was a bank called the Greenpoint Savings Bank. They were very into this. They knew a lot of small business people were not reporting all their income, so they would give you a mortgage, and they figure, well, you've got other money that you're not reporting, and it'll be okay. But it wasn't okay, because a lot of people, they couldn't pay. Okay. So there's something called a balloon mortgage. Okay? Now, a balloon mortgage is this. Instead of paying off the mortgage in 20 years or 10 years or 30 years, you only pay off part of it, and then there's a big chunk at the end. Like, let's say it's a $300,000 mortgage, and usual mortgage, after 25 years, the $300,000 is all paid plus interest. The interest is usually, over time, it's like wind up being $600,000. Anyway, if you make the monthly payments much cheaper, but there's $200,000 left to pay at the end. Now, you don't want to have $200,000 to pay at the end, but depending on your own personal age, you're a human being. You have a lifespan. The bank has no lifespan. The bank is forever. They're a corporation. It shouldn't matter to them if they're going to get $200,000 at the end, because by the end, you will have probably died, or sold the house, retired to Florida, or moved in because you were, 75 years old by that time, 85 years old by that time, moved in with your children, moved into a nursing home, something like that. And then the balloon could be paid when the house is sold, when you no longer were able to take up the house. Anyway, I was able to win some cases like this. Because you say to the bank, look, bank, you can have a performing loan. And to them, all they care about is that they collect money every month. Because then they can tell the federal bank regulators that the mortgage is performing. And the fact that there's a balloon at the end, it shouldn't matter to them. Now, a lot of them are so thick, you can't get through to them because they don't want to modify the mortgage because they're rigid. But you can engage, there are now referees, there are now foreclosure courts because the state doesn't want people to be kicked out of their houses. We have a first-class, excellent chief judge of the state of New York, Jonathan Lippman, and he has announced that this is the policy. He's told all the lower court judges, look, I don't want people thrown out of their houses. Find a way. So, this is a way. I came up with it. I kept someone in the house this way. So that's, I recommend to you. I recommend to anybody who's got mortgage problems, try to get the bank to refinance it with a balloon at the end. The end being when you're old enough that you don't want the house anymore anyway. So, okay.
Answer your question? Okay, good. Now, Attorney Muhammad Ibn Bashir is here with us, and he's the author of Raw Law. He is also a brother who's been practicing law for some time in the criminal courts, and he's seen some things that prompted him to put together a book. Now, the title of this panel is, what is the difference between Negro law and white law? If that is something that's real or unreal or a figment of folks' imagination or the reality of people's experience. So what the procedure is that the panel responds to that. We're not in a debate. Responds to that, and then after that response, then the audience can ask questions of the panel. So when you see that title, you hear that, what is your reaction?
Well, first of all, let me thank you all for having me here. I am so flattered to be here. I'm flattered for the invitation, flattered that you all would come out. It's Black History Month. I just thank you, and please accept my apologies for arriving late. I'm a criminal trial attorney, and as it would be, I'm in the middle of a criminal trial. So I had to leave New Jersey at 5 o'clock because the judge held me over. We were in the middle of some arguments, and one of the arguments I made was, Judge, unless you want a whole bunch of black folks who I promised to be in front of calling you tomorrow, you might want to let me go at least within a reasonable hour. So please accept my apologies. The panelists, please accept my apologies for arriving late. I'm usually on time. I took 1 or 2 sanctions in my day for being late, but you learn, you live and you learn. When I first heard the topic, I laughed. I mean, to be honest with you, I just laughed. But the thought process that goes into that, see, because you said, is it just a figment of somebody's imagination? You know, 3 weeks ago, liberation from Egypt was a figment of somebody's imagination, and it turned out to be the order of the day. So even though we imagined it, there is a difference. And let me give you a little bit of history. Now, one of the things I like to do when I talk to people or talk with people is to try to gauge who it is I'm talking to. If I'm talking to kids, I talk a little bit different. And since I'm looking out in the audience and everybody's about my age or younger, which means that you're all about 25, then that means we can talk like 25-year-old grown folks. I'm not trying to say anything that offends anyone. Please understand this. But truth is truth. And sometimes it comes through your eyes differently than it comes through another person's lens. You understand? So what you see doesn't make it any less truth because someone else sees it differently. So if you see it differently than me, then alhamdulillah, may Allah bless you. But let me tell you how I see it. White law means that law which we have here in this system that governs our day-to-day life. And since my specialty, for lack of a better way to put it, is criminal justice, let me tell you how criminal justice is, white law is different from Negro law. White law is your United States Constitution.
Hello.
The The reason why you know it's white law is because when it was originally instituted, it didn't include you.
Thank you.
Especially if you're black. And if you're a woman, and if you're poor white, it probably didn't include you then either.
Teach, brother, teach.
When you were being talked about, you weren't even considered to be a human. You were considered to be 3/5 of what the standard was. And the standard was white law.
Teach.
And so when you place that into the doctrine immediately, you originally are really dealing with a mindset. So what is the mindset of the people who are creating this type of law? Their mindset was white supremacy, meaning that if we set the standard and everybody else falls what? Not equal to it, but underneath it. So we get to decide by the pen or by the bullet which one of these particular laws we are going to implement. The gun, therefore, becomes a weapon of implementation of white power structure. Does anybody understand that? Of how I'm saying this? Because I want you all to go tomorrow. I left my Constitution. I usually carry it with me. But when you're in the middle of a criminal trial, you got so much on your mind. The last thing I want to do is to grab the Constitution. I want to grab something and throw it at the judge or something. And you never say that. You know, you never say that. I mean, you think it, but you never say it. So I didn't grab my Constitution. But go to your 13th Amendment and read it carefully. Read it and it will tell you that slavery is abolished here in the United States. And it gives you an exception because that's what law does. It will give you the exceptions. The one exception is except when you're convicted of a crime.
That's right.
Now, look, all you have to do then, once you look at it, is take the metaphor. And you remember, just close your eyes on any day and think about your very first ancestor who stepped foot on this particular soil. He or she probably came here as a slave. They probably came here with shackles on their wrists, on their waist, and on their ankles. Now, if you opened your eyes and walked down to Brooklyn, to the Superior Court, or to Queens County, or to Manhattan, to any one of the courthouses, and you watch the people who are being ushered out, what you will see is a list or a litany of young black people with what? Chains on their wrists, chains on their waist, and chains on their ankles. So then you get an understanding that, at least just figuratively, as to what it is that white law means to black people. Now, where did I get that from? Come on, Muhammad, you really shooting off the hip. Because you see, right on the heels of the 13th Amendment came the 14th Amendment. And the 14th Amendment guarantees you fundamental due process in the court system. But there's a little clause in here that I'm going to interpret for you as only someone like me can do it. And again, if you don't see it the way I see it, I'm going to laugh. You see it the way you want to see it. There's a thing in there called the privileges and immunities. Now, you all just got finished watching what happened with Nelson Mandela in South Africa, and they had these commissions when it was to give all the bad deeds done if you just come forth and confess it, and everybody. That would mean they would be what? Immune from prosecution. White America wrote into its law that they would be immune. That's where the privileges and immunity comes from. But they never gave up the privilege to be white.
Hello.
They never gave up the privilege. And what does it mean to be privileged? It means that you have the right to be respected and everybody else has to fall in line. So therefore, your educational institutions always feature a white standard. Your housing institutions, your banking institution, your picking institution, it has a white standard. They have the right and the privilege of being able to define people, to speak people, and to name people. This is why young boys can be running through Central Park and a white girl can say, I was raped, and be brutally beaten. And they grab up anybody, and they give it a definition.
With that paint job.
They called it wilding.
Wilding.
They called it wilding. And that gave the whole country an idea of what it was to be young and black, because they named it. See, but they did that before. You remember when early 1900s, Birth of a Nation. Remember the movie? Right? That Pentagon, big black buck and everything. The white girl's running, she goes, and she doesn't want this big black buck to touch her. She says, And she, rather than have this big black buck touch her, she throws herself off a bridge. And she dies. She became a martyr. And that gave birth to what? The Ku Klux Klan. These shining white knights willing to come out and defend what? White law against black people.
With the Christian cross.
Now, that's what I mean when you ask me what's the difference between Negro law and white law. White law is the standard. Negro law is whatever falls underneath it. Negro law is the response. White law is the standard. So if you think for one moment that you're changing the standard,
never.
You have another thing coming. You have to begin, if you're going to ever make the change that you want to see your community prosper, you have to understand where you fit in. And if all you ever do in life is fit in, then you better find comfort in your second-class citizenship. Because if you had a problem, my mother used to tell me this.
That's right.
My mother used to tell me this. She was about wise. But she used to tell me little tidbits. And she said, if you got a problem, Muhammad, and it lasts for more than 10 minutes, you really don't want to solve that problem. The Muslims believe that if you have a problem with your brother, if you don't resolve it in 3 days, you better let it go. Also, it's a sin on you. I'm saying to you that if you got a problem and you black in America and it lasted for 400 years and you haven't figured out how to solve it, you either better get used to your second-class citizenship or you don't want to solve it. That's the Negro law. The Negro law is acceptance of the white standard. The acceptance of the white standard is Negro law. White is the standard. Negro or black or African American, whatever, the acceptance of second-class citizenship is what you have bought into. And until you understand what it is to fight for first-class citizenship, you will always be subject to white law.
All right. Thank you, Brother Muhammad Ibn Bashir, author of Law. Now, once again, this panel is for the purpose, your purpose, and that is answering questions that you have. The brother in the black hat. You had your hands raised before. Yes, sir. Question.
My question relates to, if research verifies, go back to the 1700s all the way up to now, that, Europe and America engaged in what was called propaganda campaigns, and we can call it a media campaign that depicted black as subhuman, inferior, particularly the black male as criminal. My question is, how do these media campaigns that are still active, how does this contribute to the dynamic of white law and Negro law?
Okay.
Attorney Kirshner.
The greatest respect for everything Mr. Bashir has said, but I urge you to think about the Civil War, because, there's white people and then there's white people. There was this huge war over this subject that, I have read up on the Civil War, and I'm sure everybody has. This was a bloody thing. More Americans died in the Civil War than in any other war, because everybody who died was an American.
Black folk died in that war.
Oh, yes. Many.
Just hold on, Attorney. Now, the protocol of this session, see, we're not involved in debates, okay? So the comments or following up on what might be said, we want to keep that at a minimum or non-existent at all. Okay, in this session, that's not a personal thing, that's just the rules of engagement here. The rules of engagement is asking questions. And I'll just do an editorial. I've been at too many meetings at the Schomburg where people disrupt. And I'm not saying this in regards to anyone here. The tendency is to come and disrupt meetings, and we have to have a tight control over meetings that we have in our community so that the people, everybody can gain the knowledge that we're there for. Okay? So, Attorney
Anyway,
Bishop.
if you read about the Civil War, and I urge everybody to read about it, this is where white people went to war against white people in big numbers over the treatment of black people. The 3/5 business that the country was started with got repealed, and it was a huge bloodbath to get it repealed. Big bloodbath with lots of dead people. So, it's not, to coin a phrase, I shouldn't say it this way, it's not all black and white. There's divisions, big divisions among white people as to how this should be. There was a whole movement at that time called the abolitionists, who were, virulent about the second-class citizenship of black people should be ended immediately. And then there were those who said, no, it should be done gradually. Then there were those who said, no, people should be permitted to go back to Africa. Liberia was established with this whole long thing throughout the 19th century about how this should go. So it's not so easy to understand. It's not so simple. It's not easy to say, well, it's all one way. It's not all one way. There are many white people of goodwill who make every effort to try and put a dent in this problem. But I leave you with that thought.
The question on the floor, panel, is the media and how what has come through the media, be it newspapers, magazines, movies, now TV, internet, whatever, contributes to what might be considered white law, Negro law, or the execution of the successful incarceration, I'll put it that way, of more people in the United States, predominantly black, than any other nation in the world, percentage-wise. So that's the question on the table. The role of media.
So the first opportunity that you have, basically, in defining is done by power. People in power are the ones who make the definition. The kidnapping and the taking of Africans from the continent and bringing them here is orchestrated, and it's been given life by virtue of law. This was written into law as being an acceptable policy, an acceptable way of doing things. It became part of the business law. It became part of the commercial transactions law. It became part of the maritime law. It became part of the regular chattel law. It became part of the criminal law. It became part of everything as it relates to the law. My comments aren't addressed to any particular white people. My comments are addressed to the issue of white law, because the people in power are the people who have the opportunity to write the law. And that's what the issue is. So the issue of media really goes to who it is who has the power to define. And I don't want you to miss this. That's why I use the example of the movie Birth of a Nation. It had an opportunity to define. See, when black people were listed as lazy, we know a different history. We said that black people were putting up a rebellion and saying, we're going to pretend that we don't like to work, or that we're shiftless, as a way of getting out from under the sun or out from under the whip. There were strategies going on in the black community as it relates to that. The people who had the ability to define them as shiftless, as lazy, as whatever, right? So when you begin to read about all these slave rebellions, you're wondering, how could these shiftless, lazy people come up with rebellion after rebellion after rebellion? All right, but the people who had the ability to define the history, the living history, were writing these people as shiftless and putting it in the law. They literally wrote your history into the law. Transposed that from 1815 to 2011. Because at the end of the day, the image is what is impacting on our community. People still believe that black people are shiftless. No disrespect to anybody here who may be Jewish. But you all know that in our community, if you want to hire a lawyer, what are you told? What is the image? Go out and hire you a Jew. Why? We have been indoctrinated to believe what the system has been educating us to believe. And we even believe it to our own detriment about ourselves. That's what media has done and continues to do. And guess what? Don't be surprised when you see all these New York cats that making a lot of money in the media, because the cats who turned in Nat Turner were black. The cats who shot Malcolm off the street were black. So the media knows who they can use in order to continue to perpetuate that which they need to continue the domination of white law. It is about law. It's not about a particular people or individual people. And please, I hope you all understand that. I'm not dissing anybody because they're white. I just understand one thing. Tell me 2 black people who wrote the Emancipation Proclamation. And why that black person would not have written the Emancipation Proclamation. It wasn't written because the particular person who wrote it loved slavery or wanted to see slavery abolished. He wrote it because at the particular time they were getting their behinds kicked by the South, and he figured that if he eliminated slavery in the states that were at rebellion against the Union, not slavery across the board, if he eliminated slavery there, that's law. That's the ability to dictate. And you, as a black person at that time, were subject to that. You were maneuvered in that. And alhamdulillah, it worked out to your benefit. But it wasn't one of those benevolent kind types of things. It was law. And it was written to maintain a status quo. And what was that status quo? The maintenance of the Union. He said it categorically why he was doing this. To maintain the Union. And that's the nature of what law does, especially as it relates to the minority community.
Okay, thank you. Questions that you want to keep in mind are those questions that relate to situations that you're dealing with. No question is disinvited, but those individuals who have come here tonight to have a question, a legal question, a housing question, a personal accident, those questions, feel free to ask. The brother in the back, Brother John.
Give me the greatest acknowledgement to God that made us. To be all that you can be. And I believe Elijah Muhammad said that white folks, or the nature of man, is to be all that he can be. And if white people being dominant, or let's say the white Anglo-Saxon Protestant, and he's called that because of all the times that he's been conquered by the Romans, by the French, by the Saxons. He's been invaded and subjected, so he knows what being put under is. And of course, you have what's that movie with the Scots?
Braveheart.
Braveheart. So white folks subjugating one another, or any group subjugating one another, it's just what happens, as is the nature of man.
Question.
So the point is that what is called white law is good by the nature of what white people should do for themselves. That we should expect anything else, I think, is insane. However, buying one piece of the pie is then saying that it's all right that you wiped out the Indians, just give us our part. So it becomes kind of maybe what we've said is black law is so that we won't get wiped out by white folks, as if they wouldn't. We have right before us what they've done to the red man and what they've done continually throughout. So our means of maintaining our be here 400 years, and remember, when we went back to Africa...
Gotta have a question, Brother John. Brother John. Okay. We got that. We got the essence of your statement. The brother in the back had his hand up for some time. The brother with his hand on his head. Looked like he's surrendering.
And it's ironic, welcome to Black Leroy. I listen to your program because
thank you. Got to ask that question, brother. We got a clock on us.
Yesterday, I was in the courts. That's why I got here late. Some policemen arrested me because they smelled marijuana on me. In my pocket and found the rest of the marijuana. You know? So I told the judge today, I said, Your Honor, people are stopping. We ain't got no more fear. We ain't got no more fear. And I told him, you're a railroad. People are raising up all over the world. Man, say, you ain't railroading us no more. My question is, we all know that white law versus white law versus black law is in degree. You know,
You got to ask a question, Brother Grant.
The question is, how could we get to the bottom of this? How could we get rid of our young people's conduct?
Okay, Brother Grant, hold on a second. I have a question coming out of his statement, which is the, quote, legality of approaching someone who may be even in a nod. They're on the street, they may be walking, and based on their nodding as they're walking, or I smell marijuana on him, that sets up a legal pathway to accost, to search, and then arrest that individual and take him to court. So that's my question to the panel. Judge Zankberg?
I wonder what happened to the rest of the marijuana. Now, of course, would you be this?
That's a confession, brother. Don't confess.
Don't say anything you'd be sorry for. Don't say anything you'd be sorry for. Remember, there's a TV camera here.
That's right. That's right. That's real.
Now, my question is, would you be less upset if they reimburse you for the cost of... Never mind. Not having been present on the street when you were spoken to, and to the limited criminal court abilities that I have, I do know that the police just can't walk up to anyone willy-nilly.
They do it every day.
Wait. They may do it every day. I didn't say they can do it. Listen, I know people who are Supreme Court justices who happen to be a darker skin than me, who get pulled over on their cars all the time and get really perturbed. You know how to spell perturbed, don't you? Okay. Just because it happens, it happens. I can tell you a very dear friend of mine, many years ago, when we were all of us young, she enjoyed some marijuana once in a while and was cheap. She didn't like to have to pay for her own grass. So she would buy a pound, divide into 16 ounces, and sell to 15 friends 15 of the ounces for the cost of the 16. She didn't make money, but she didn't pay for her own ounce. At some point, they had an old brownstone in Brooklyn, which they themselves were renovating by hand. They found the chicken feathers in the wall, because there had been a chicken plucking place. Say that fast. A chicken plucking place. And apparently they had a small child. And they were out having dinner one night, and someone broke into their place. And without thinking, they immediately called the police. The police came to investigate. And they walked up the first floor, second floor. Third floor, they went to there was a bedroom. And all across the bed was 3/4 of an ounce of marijuana, which was what she hadn't used. And as they opened the door, she went, or some similar word. Luckily, the police were young. You know, you get young police, and sometimes you get older police, sometimes you get harder police, and sometimes you get softer police. The police were young and saw the grass on the bed and said, look at those stupid burglars. They dropped their marijuana all over your bed.
No.
True story. True story. Those stupid burglars. You know burglars aren't smart to begin with. How many criminals are there that are smart? If they were smart, would they be criminals? That's right. That's right. So the answer is go to school and learn how to do it properly. Then you can become a multi-billionaire like Madoff and get billions and get caught when you're 70 years old and have to spend the rest of your life in jail. I don't know how it is, but as was said, young black males, 18 to 25, and the brother who just spoke, I don't think fits into that age category. When the police are walking around, have been trained to be extra vigilant. They are human beings just as you and I are. They care about their own skin. They do not want to be attacked from the back by these young, testosterone-driven 18 to 25-year-olds. And if they do see someone walking nodding, they have the right, the constitutional right, the New York State constitutional right, the inherent right to go up, not to start searching. Do they do start searching? Yeah, but they're wrong, and if people catch them, they'll be thrown out. They have the right to inquire what's going on. That's called a plain view. If it's alcohol, it's alcohol, but if they smell marijuana, they then have the right to say, sir, ma'am, have you been drinking? As the commercial is, you know, with the door opening and the booze comes out, have you been drinking? Have you have any marijuana? And if God, heaven forbid, you were to reach a go. No, I don't. They have the right to proceed and eventually to arrest. Same thing would be if it were heroin or anything else stronger. Fortunately for the brother, marijuana at this point in society is not considered to be as strong or as bad as heroin, as many other drugs are considered to be. The penalties are, for the most part, depending upon how much you have, can be just a money fine, $1.00. We are moving to a society that is going to legalize marijuana. If that happens, your taxes will go down, because the tax on marijuana will be really high, and the government will be making a lot of money. Remember also, if people have terminal cancer, there are a lot of hospices in New York that have legal authority to give the people who have cancer medical marijuana. Even in New York, never mind California, which is done years, in New York. The goal is because the marijuana tends to keep the pain away, or I am told, having never been there, truly having never been there. So it can have some beneficial effects. Keep your hands on the wheel, keep your eyes on the road. Be careful. If you're walking around and your skin is dark, don't start running when you see a cop. It's not good, you know. It's like when I was in college and just started to drive a car. One of the first things my driving instructor said, if you're going to get into an accident, try not to hit a police car. You'll get arrested. Be careful. Everyone. There's an ancient adage. Spoke about the Prophet Muhammad. There's an ancient adage. Every religion around the world, there's an ancient adage. It's true now and has always been. treat everyone else as you would have them treat you. If that ever happened, we wouldn't have racism. We wouldn't have this garbage and this crap.
Thank you, Judge Dankberg. Now, Brother Bashir will respond also to Brother Grant. We have a lot of hands raised. We only have 45 minutes left. So the thing is, ask a question. If you have a statement, write it down on paper and put a question mark behind it and then ask the question. Now, we had the sister right in the front. Oh, wait a minute, I'm sorry, sis. I'm sorry. Attorney Bashir.
Thanks, sis. Give me about 30 seconds, all right? Look, you got a smile on your face, so that's a good sign. The problem here, the missing part of the analysis is basically in your question, the difference between Negro law and white law. Because all of you probably have this card here when you walked in. Well, in the card it talks about something that is a fact. It says numbers don't lie. It says in 2008, 531,159 New Yorkers were stopped and frisked by NYPD. 465,413 were totally innocent. That's 88%. African Americans, 51% of those. Latinos, 32% of those. Whites, 11% of those. That's the reality. So even though the law may not say you're supposed to do it, they can do it. They do it because they can. And they do it because of something else that's inherent in the law. They see you differently than they see their community. They see young black male differently. And the only people who don't understand that is us. We are constantly running back to this, going over this year after year after year. How many of you all understand what the Black Panthers stood for? Well, what were they standing for if it wasn't this exact same thing? This is the Black Panthers came out with a manifesto saying, stop this.
That's right.
Where were you in 1955 when what's the young kid was, Emmett Till was beaten to death? Where were you when they were trying to stop lynching in the early 1900s? The same perception that exists now existed then. Why are we making believe that it doesn't exist? It is about perception. And so inherent in the law is what? I told you from the beginning. You were listed as 3/5 of a human being, and you are being treated like you're 3/5 of the human being. You're more suspect than anybody else.
Thank you.
You're more likely to commit a crime. Why? What is inherent about you that would make you more likely to commit a crime, other than that you are black? And I'm suggesting to you, you can research it yourself, that the law won't change until you are in the position to begin to change it. The idea of what it was to be a black man in America changed with 4 or 5 things. The Nation of Islam, the Black Panthers, the Civil Rights Movement, Malcolm X, Martin Luther King. And when I say the Civil Rights Movement, I'm not discounting, again, the white folks and the Latins who participated in that movement, but they were attempting to change the image of how people were supposed to be perceived, because the law and the culture had written you as being the criminal, written in that you are less than and your rights are less than the other people who are listed in this particular thing. And stop pretending that it don't exist.
Thank you, Attorney Bashir. Sister in the front, your question.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Harold of Washington, and I feel extremely blessed to be in the presence of such gentlemen such as yourself, that you are going to be able to share with me your knowledge. I have 3 different things, but they're going to be very quick. I happen to live in a city building right now, and because they're not fixing the elevator has slammed into my left side. Must be 4 or 5 times. I've had to go to emergency, and I'm having a lot of problems in this left side, and I would like to pursue litigation. I'd like to have help in going that direction. While downtown on 34th Street, running into a store, suddenly I'm on the floor. I slip and fall. Have no problems with my mind. I'm fine. Slipped and fell. 34th Street Partnership. They weren't cleaning. They weren't doing any putting the salt down. When I got up out of the spot, my body had made a spot because it was snow, and I was fine. My body had made a spot, and I found out that there was some sort of metal grate there. And this perturbed me so much because if that grate had been sticking up, that would have stabbed me in the back. I almost couldn't even get up, so I had to kind of roll over, and I would touch the store because I was on my way into one of the stores. So I'd like to I'd like to have litigation on that. And then also, I was hired as an executive director for this particular nonprofit, and the gentleman kind of started moving in a particular direction. He started wanting me to come and meet him all by himself and different things, and it was starting to get a little funny because God is my God. And I'm like, nah, this is feeling kind of icky. And when I started pulling back, he started cussing me and doing everything. So lo and behold, he decided that he is not going to bring me into this $80,000 a year job that I'm very qualified for. And you know, I took notes, definitely we were on camera meeting and everything like that. So my question is, you gentlemen, with all of your knowledge and expertise, how can you help me to pursue litigation in those three issues?
Okay. Okay, you got three cases there. The elevator, was that in a city building or?
It's a city building, and they're getting, this person is getting a lot of money.
Okay, if it's a city building, if the city owns it, you have to file a notice of claim within 90 days of the accident if you want to sue the city. So you have to hurry up. When did it happen?
Well, you know, it just happened again in the last couple of days.
Well, then you're within the 90 days. Hurry up.
Okay.
Controller's office, number 1 Center Street, 5th floor. File the notice of claim. If you don't do it, you're out.
Okay, notice of claim, 90 days, 1 Center Street, right. 5th floor?
5th floor, yeah. No, Bureau of Law and Adjustment, let's call it. The New York City Controller's Office. Right. And then you need to get a lawyer to help you pursue this claim.
Yes.
Okay, now, the slip and fall, that was a private company? Yes?
So 34th Street Partnership in Bernardo or something like that, they act out fell?
If it's not the city, you have 3 years to do a personal injury case. You have to find out who owned the building, where it happened. You have to do a title search, find out who the owner of the building is. The owner of the building probably has an insurance company. The insurance company will pay. However, you're not allowed to sue the insurance company. You have to sue the owner of the building. If you got the wrong owner, case closed, you're out. So you have to get a lawyer to help you with that too. Okay. Third case, sexual harassment on the job. So, you've got 5 places you could bring that. There's the New York City Human Rights Commission, the New York State Human Rights Division, the Federal Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, New York State courts, and federal courts. Now, the federal courts require you to go to one of the 3 agencies first. The 3 agencies are not too energetic. They kind of sit on these things. The state courts will allow you to file a lawsuit right away, just as if it was a personal injury case. So my personal preference is to go to the state courts. Why? You can demand a jury. Who's on a jury? You're looking at the jury pool right here. So that's why I like the state courts for civil rights cases better than the federal courts, because then you don't get mixed up with the whole EEOC, which is it's a time waster, is what it is. Right. So you need a lawyer to help you with that too. But for all these cases, you have to prove damages. You have to show that you were out money because of this. Typically, hospital bills. That's how we prove damages. So, if you were in the hospital for a substantial amount of time, the rough courthouse rule of these things, well, the case is worth 2 to 3 times what the hospital bill is. Now, if you weren't in the hospital, this is a problem. It's hard to prove that you were hurt. So, that's the short answer to a long question.
Okay. Now, my brother with his hand up right here. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'm going to ask a question. Concerning the domestic thing, on November 30th, I was arrested from my house and locked up. My wife said that she was afraid. Police came in there, 8 deep, guns drawn, locked me up.
For what?
Exactly, for what? She said, I'm afraid. We had an argument. She called and said, I'm afraid. So I got locked and put out of my house. I'm the primary tenant in the house. My question is, what right do they have to come to my house, lock me up? She put an order of protection in. So I'm out of my house since November 30th. What option do I have now to fight this? Because, I mean, I've talked to a lot of men, and they say the same thing happened. The woman is tired, or they want the man out. I'm afraid. Police come to my house and lock me up. There was no violence there, no physical violence, not even a threat of violence.
Are you married?
I'm married.
You're married to the person who got the order of protection? Your wife got it? Right. You need to go to the matrimonial term of the Supreme Court. Are you getting divorced, or were you divorced?
Well, I can't live with it now. I can't trust it, so that's going down.
You need to start a matrimonial case in the matrimonial term of the state Supreme Court in the case in the county where you live. What county do you live in?
I'm in New York. Now, so what happened to I've been charged with menacing, aiding for me and a B misdemeanor.
So you have a criminal case too?
I have a criminal case. So 9 days later, she went and filed another order of protection against me for my son, saying that he's also afraid for his life.
You have a criminal case and a matrimonial case. You got two cases.
Yeah.
You got to deal with them.
No, attorney.
You need a lawyer to help you. Maybe you need two lawyers.
Attorney Kershaw. Would you, Attorney Kershaw?
There happens to be a very competent lawyer sitting on my side.
Brother, I always say get a lawyer.
Well, I got one, but you know,
Pay him.
What I'm saying, my question is, can somebody come and put me out of my house because of the say-so?
If it's your wife, if it's your wife, unfortunately, the answer is yes. There's not too many people who can put you out of your house. Your wife is one of them. Yes, under certain circumstances, yes. If you go to the police and say, she struck me, yes. If it's true, it has to be true.
Well, the first case wasn't true, so I'm saying,
You got to get a lawyer to pursue that.
Okay, in terms of, just for my clarity and other people's clarity, when he gets a lawyer, whether it's legal aid or whatever, when he gets a lawyer, what does the lawyer do? What is the lawyer going to proceed on? As a measurement, he needs to know this measurement so he knows the man is doing what he's supposed to do.
Okay, if you have no money, then you get legal aid. If you're out of work, if you're unemployed, but that doesn't extend to the matrimonial case. In the criminal case, you have an absolute right to have a lawyer if you don't have money. Now, in the matrimonial case, unfortunately, there's no right to a free lawyer in a matrimonial case. You're going to have to hire one because you can't let her do that to you. I mean, this is not right. The criminal case, you're on the defensive. You're the defendant. In the matrimonial case, you could be the plaintiff.
the matrimonial side, what right you have to put me out of my own house? That's the matrimonial?
Well, you have to go against her. You know, why she did that. Maybe you can get the house back. You know, matrimonial judge can put you back.
So a matrimonial lawyer or a lawyer in that particular case in a court situation could cross-examine and, quote, bring out the truth, but he couldn't do it.
No, by yourself, you would be very different. Very different.
Bashir?
Most times, what you're dealing with is domestic violence. I mean, that's really what the act is. In most jurisdictions, what happens is whenever there's a threat, I'm not certain how it is in New York, but in New Jersey, if there's a threat made and someone calls in a threat, someone is leaving the house and they're leaving under arrest. So if she made the threat, she called and she said you threatened her, they're taking you out, they're locking you up, and they're granting her, if she pursues it, a temporary restraining order. The temporary is the key to that one, because then you're entitled to a hearing to determine whether or not she has proofs that establish that there should be a final restraining order issued against you. All right, so you have a temporary, you get a lawyer between the time that she has you arrested and put out, and you go in with an attorney, hopefully, who's able to question her about this particular allegation, and she has a burden. She has to meet that standard that this threat is real, is realistic enough to convince a judge to issue that final restraining order, which is what really is going to keep you out of your home. Because if the judge grants the final, then you're done. You're out of the house. I mean, you have some appeal rights, etc., up the road, but that's why you grab your lawyer as quickly as you can, because if you're trying to get back into your home, or at least trying to establish some semblance of my home is my castle, that lawyer is going to be the one who has to fight you, but it's at that restraining order hearing that you go in and make your fight.
Thank you. Brother in the back. This brother right here. You, sir. You raised your hand.
Yeah, he wants me to ask a question.
Okay.
The situation is an individual commits a civil suit, and they were winning. And when the opposition saw that they were winning, all of a sudden now they want to bring in that the person had a past criminal record. And the question that we have is, can they, in a civil suit, bring in a person's criminal record in the civil suit that has nothing to do with it?
My clarity, this is a police brutality case?
No, this is
just a civil between two people?
An accident. It's an accident. Someone got hurt. It was a person in a driver's truck who ran over a person.
Right.
Risk of a suit against them, and the insurance company, they couldn't produce a witness, and so it's been going for almost 5 years. Which I feel is long. With almost 5 years without resolution. So now when they have no other way to turn, now they say, oh, but she has a criminal record.
Okay. All right.
In tune where we started about the Harlem Law Library, there is a marvelous softbound set of books called New York Pattern Jury Instructions. In 3 softbound volumes, a panel of New York Supreme Court justices over many years have come up with the instructions that the judges give to the juries. This big. And then we'll have 5 pages of case law, not just case law, the leading cases on the subject, which are absolutely guaranteed the law of New York on that subject. There is a section there is a section in books on evidence about whether or not a person's prior criminal records can be used in impeachment in a civil trial. It is not an easy yes-no question. It is page after page after page. Your answers will be found there. The answer to your question is both yes and no. It is an old story. If you remember back when Nikita Khrushchev was at the UN. You know, when the law is on your side, you argue the law. When the facts are on your side, you argue the facts. When neither are on your side, you just argue. Or in the case of Nikita Khrushchev, you take off your shoe and you pound the table. If the insurance carrier is, this is now in the middle of a trial, you're saying, or no? Has the trial started?
No, the trial hasn't started.
Okay. So they haven't, when you said earlier, you look like you were winning. You haven't even started to win. Insurance companies are not in business to pay money out. They will try to hold on to your money and earn interest on it as much as possible. Maybe they will dangle a small carrot at the beginning. Maybe it'll get larger and larger and larger. At some point, you'll be in the courtroom, and the judge will say to both sides, when you want to try this case, when you're going to pick a jury, the numbers go up. They pick a jury, the numbers go up. At some point, if the case is going badly against the insurance carrier, the numbers will go up. Maybe the judge will stick in and make suggestions to both sides. The plaintiff usually is up here, high, the defendant is down low, low. The judge will comment what the judge feels is a proper amount. Your attorney, the plaintiff, may not agree with the judge. The defendant may not agree with the judge. The judge doesn't make the decision, the jury does. But your goal is to keep moving the case forward until you get to be a jury, to the jury. To answer your question, I strongly urge you, and it's in the library on 34th Street in Madison Avenue. There's a library, little library at 87th Street, available to the public. Pattern jury instructions, Richardson on evidence will answer your questions and every possible subtlety within it. It's a very interesting topic, and it's one which I have looked at many times, both as a law clerk and as a sitting judge. And the answer is, it depends.
Okay, thank you. The sister right here, Akil, a sister right here, your question.
My question is, there was a case in 2009, Dr. Matthew Miller, in Flushing Hospital, was sued for about $1.5 million by a nurse. I had contacted the same doctor. I'm a workers' comp case, and that's how I got to him. And he did the same thing to me in his office. I filed a complaint with the Office of Professional and Medical Misconduct. I just had a hearing with Dr. Matthew, his attorney, and the board, and I'm just at odds with myself because I couldn't find anybody to help me with this case. I went to the same attorney that the nurse went to file her case, and when I told them what my issues were, they said I was just complaining. So I filed my own complaint, and I thought I would get a fair hearing through the board, but I don't think that's going to happen. And I want to know if I can still file a case on my own in regards to this doctor.
Where did you file? You said you just filed a complaint. Where did you file your complaint?
Professional.
Only there?
Yes, only there.
What was the date that it happened?
2008, January.
It's medical malpractice 2.5 years. 2.5 years. So was it more than 2.5 years ago?
Yes.
Yes. Well,
This is not medical misconduct. This is sexual harassment.
well, it was during the medical. Was he examining you at the time?
Yes.
You were his patient.
Yes.
Okay. It comes under the heading of medical malpractice. In other words, while a medical procedure is going on, he's not supposed to sexually harass you. This is not part of the medical treatment.
He's been doing this since 1998.
If you bring a case in the state education department, which is where the board of, that's what licenses doctors, all that can happen is his license may be suspended or removed. If you want to win money damages, you have to bring it in the state Supreme Court, either where you live, where he lives, or where it happened, within 2.5 years of the event. And then you can get money damages for what happened, if you can persuade a jury that it was outrageous enough, which, from what you're telling me, it was. But that's, and you need to have a lawyer to help you do it. You need to be within the 2.5 years. If you're not, then, you missed it. So,
Attorney, in 2008, it still could be. We're in 2011.
That's 3 years.
Well, she said January 2008, and this is February 2011. It's 3 years later or more, and it's 2.5 years as a statute.
She said January, yeah.
All right, okay. As you'll see, I'm up here, but I ain't graduated from school. The brother in the back.
Yeah, I bought a fiance from Africa. We had 3 babies. And she got over here and got in a support group, and they told her she didn't need it. So she took the babies and left. And my question is, where did she go? That's the question. Where did she go?
Okay, well,
fiance, that's fine.
Okay, you have rights to those children until a court rules. You have rights. Yeah, he's right. Regarding the children, that is, until a court rules, you have as much right to custody as she does. However, custody of children is decided where the children physically are. So you got to find them. If they're in Africa, you got to go to Africa. If they're in New York, you can do it in New York. Wherever the children are, you can commence a family court case to enforce your custody and or visitation rights.
That's all you got to say.
Well, that's the law on the subject.
No, I mean, I don't know what she said.
Well, you got to find out. Oh, yeah, I should tell you about this. We live in the information age. Nobody disappears from the face of the earth. You can find them. You can find them. Where was she last? Where'd you last see her?
Where's her family from?
What?
Where's her family from?
Where's her family from? Where? It's a big place.
Even I know that.
Well, find out where.
Contact the American Embassy in Ethiopia, see if they can locate us. Write a letter to the American Embassy in Ethiopia, see if they can help you. Go to the Ethiopian Embassy in New York, the UN consulate. You're in New York. Every consulate is here from every country.
I have this problem frequently. Retrace your own steps. Where did you meet her?
Where
in Ethiopia? Addis Ababa. Yes. Okay. Go back to where you met her.
Okay. Now.
Start asking around.
The odds are she's living with her parents.
Now, attorneys, I'm going to make an interpretation. I'm going to assume that she did not go back to Africa, or to Ethiopia, that she is somewhere. Let's say she's in New Jersey. If she's in New Jersey, what's his procedure?
And you're going to call Mr. Bashir, and he's going to go.
So see, Brother Bashir, at the end.
Look, brother, I have your case on my desk right now. Look, you can say it's just anybody from Ethiopia. I hope I don't offend you, but you invite me here to apologize. Look, that's a scam. It is one of the biggest scams in immigration right now is that the Ethiopian community are marrying African American men to get into the country. They are using it as a way of getting in. It's happening with Moroccans as well. They're marrying to get into the country. The minute you have a baby, you got lucky. She didn't complain that you slapped her or pushed her down a flight of stairs. That's what was next. If the support group is educating her as to how to get in the country and then get out of your presence. That's what's next. All right? So, you know, you can find them, but just like these gentlemen said, you have to find them where the children are, and then you have to initiate an action. And look, if you really want to find them in America, believe me, you can find her. Because she's not going back to Addis Ababa. If she's in America, she's loving it.
Sister in the brown cap.
I have another question about housing. I heard that there's a thing called latchkey or stall rent or stale rent.
Yes.
To where if your landlord tries to go back to 2008, if you've been paying your rent consistently like for a long time, but then they're trying to get you out. This is one of my other, and they went all the way back to 2008 in February of 2008, June of 2008, saying that I owe money from way back then.
There's a current lawsuit, or it's a past lawsuit?
No, it's current.
The current lawsuit, okay. There are several items that you're raising. As we've spoken about the 2.5 years for medical malpractice, there's something called the statute of limitations. Statute of limitations means a certain period of time in which you must bring a lawsuit for certain types of lawsuits. It varies from types of lawsuit to types of lawsuit. If someone insults you, says something bad about you, calls you a bad name, you're supposed to be angry. Angry, you're supposed to react real quick. New York, 1 year, statute of limitations. You slip and fall on a sidewalk, or you slip and fall on a building ceiling hits you, 3 years, malpractice. Medical malpractice, legislature a number of years ago said, we're cutting 3 years down to 2.5 years. Special because it's medical malpractice. Landlord-tenant is a contract. Contract has a 6-year statute of limitations. That means they can sue you for money for up to 6 years. Now, you are also raising something called a summary proceeding, an eviction proceeding. An eviction proceeding must be done, summary proceeding, summary meaning fast. If the landlord claims that you haven't paid rent in January, February 2011, continuously from 2008, they are waited too long to bring a lawsuit for those 3 years worth of rent. That is called estoppel from bringing a eviction proceeding, not an estoppel from seeking a money judgment. You got to separate the money judgment from the possession judgment. If they have said, now the term laches you use, L-A-C-H-E-S, is a Latin expression, meaning by the passage of time, you have changed your position. Which means if they say today that you haven't paid your February 2008 rent, and if you can demonstrate that each month, while you originally had it set aside, you spent it for other things, clothing, food, what have you, and you don't have it anymore, they can still get a money judgment against you and then try to collect on the money judgment, but they are barred from eviction because of the laches, the delay situation without explanation. Next point. If they are claiming you didn't pay February, June 08, January 09, October 09, and then October, November, December of 10, and January and February of 11, if they're claiming that, they need to bring in their books and records. Now, it could very well be that the landlord's books and records show that your rent from March 08 was credited to February 08. April to March, etc. What you need to do if you send in your rent, first of all, is to use a check or a bank check. A lot of people use money orders, whether they're from the bank or from the post office or from American Express or from the check cashing places. I'll come to that. Your own check, you should write on the back, March 2011, rent in full. The check gets cashed, you are deemed to have paid March in full. The landlord cannot then credit you to February for that check. If you are using your own check or a bank check or a traveler's aid or one of these check cashing places, if you want a receipt,
You have to ask for it in writing. A receipt must set forth, among other things, the amount that's being paid and what is being applied for. So if you give a check today, saying February 2011 rent, and the landlord gives you a receipt saying October 2006, you have a right to reject that and stop payment on the check because you're paying February 2011 rent. Rent in full, February 2011. The ability of the landlord to collect a judgment is like any other judgment. Like I sold you this tie and you gave me a check for it and it bounced. I can sue you. I can't evict you for it. So if they're suing you today for February 2008 rent and nothing else, they can't evict you. But they can evict you for not paying October, November, December 10 and January, February of 11. Because that's called current rent.
But on my checks and I write my personal checks, it just says the date and it says rent on the bottom. It doesn't have...
Not sufficient. You are saying a half word. On the back of the check where they endorse it, you handwrite rent in full, February 2011. You make a photocopy of the front and back of your check. You have proof that you are tendering. You're making a tender of February 2011 rent. You're not just tendering rent. You're tendering February 2011 rent, which they can accept or reject. A contract, ancient rule, offer and acceptance. You are offering February 2011 rent. They accept it. You've got a contract for February 2011 rent. They can then say, oh, hey, she didn't pay January. Sue me in regular court. Not in the landlord-tenant proceeding. Aha! Aha! You can record this, it'll be on TV, and I'm available for autographed copies after the...
All right, and for future purposes, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, when you come to panels like this, bring a notebook and take notes. Practice taking notes. Don't go from memory. Yes.
I apologize. I used to say this all the time while I was a housing judge and civil court judge. The check cashing places, the post office, their checks are wonderful. They get paid, they get wonderful. If they get lost or stolen in the mail, or the landlord claims they didn't get them, all you have, usually, is a stub. All that stub means is you fill something out. Maybe it has a dollar amount. It shows you bought a money order for $442.83. It doesn't mean you sent it to the landlord. It doesn't mean you made the check payable to the landlord. It doesn't mean they received it. It doesn't mean they cashed it. Okay. In order to get a copy of that check, you have to write to a central clearinghouse, which is on the check, on the money order. It takes 6 to 8 months to trace that check. If you use your own bank check, it takes less than a week. I don't need to say anything more. You're all brilliant people, and you've all got MBAs from this session, if nothing else.
Brother Akil, you had a question.
Yeah, I wanted to direct something to you and you.
Well, that lets me out.
Question. It will be short, but it will pertain to what the brother was talking about. You know, I did an internship in Neighborhood Defender Services. Brother Gilbert, that's on the panel, Gilbert that's on the panel, as he had taught us probable cause based on what you can hear, see, or smell. And I have a group of young men that range in the age right now that's a target group. Now, some of them, right now, none of them have any kind of records. And I just read in some papers the other day that during the Bloomberg administration, there's been more people arrested for marijuana, young men arrested for marijuana during his administration than Koch, Giuliani, and Beach's administration.
Come on.
So now, the thing is, you know, it seems like it's particular. There has to be a particular reason for this. I mean, that's a whole lot. They say this year is more than that than all three of those administrations combined. So the point is, these boys now getting of age. They got one of them back there. I think he's 29 days. He's 20. But now they start out, got some young ones. Now they're getting up into the age like 17, 18, and 19. They're starting to be approached by police officers. So I get to know you right workshops and whatnot that I learned from Gilbert that sits on the panel with you all. But the thing is, what do you think about that? You know, is it any credence to what they're saying about is that many that's being arrested now, they're being stopped, based without any probable cause, they're being searched. If they find something, they take them down and get them fingerprints and whatnot, and then they let them go. You know, so what's happening is they give them a record. They give them a record, give them a mugshot, they give them fingerprints. They're not even 21 years old, and some of them are going through a lot of trauma behind this. So I just want to ask you your take on that.
I think it's a bad policy. It's a bad thing. Now, on this very panel, he's not here tonight. There's a lawyer named Andrew Marshall. Andrew Marshall specializes in suing over this. If the police stop somebody without probable cause, he will sue the police department. Now, that is a very technical thing. You have to file a notice of claim against the police department within 90 days. You have to prove that there was no probable cause. But Andrew Marshall, has made himself an expert in this subject. I'll give you his phone number, 212-571-3030.
Could you repeat that? 571-3030.
He has made himself an expert in suing the police department over unlawful stopping of people. So, and he described, the last time we had this panel, he described a beautiful case where he actually made the officer personally pay the guy who received. Yes.
I love that.
Yeah, so you should call him up. Andrew Marshall, very good. 212-571-3030. Very difficult cases, I should say. But he's made himself a specialist in this.
Why do you think the administration is
why are they doing that?
We would think that it's a tactic to target the young people to get them fingerprinted, to get them mugshot, to get them institutionalized into their frame of mind. So why do you think that is?
Why they're doing it, I don't know, but in my personal opinion, it is wrong, wrong, wrong.
My response is that you have to look at the end result of the criminalizing of an individual, whether that person is GED, on his way to college, or her way to college. If that eliminates them from grants, loans, from various supports, and at the least it does psychological damage to them, because all these brothers out here, I watch them being searched, and I watch them after, they just walk on, but I know that they are psychologically traumatized, although it doesn't show. And they'll go home and beat up the cat, scratch the wall, and that sort of thing. And we have that internalized thing, which Franz Fanon talks about in Wretched of the Earth. We only have time for one more question, dear brothers and sisters, and that's the brother in the back.
My question is about order protection. I've been going to court for about 7 months about order protection, and all 50 of disorderly conduct. But last week, they called me and told me they're going to offer me an ACD in 1 year order protection. So I want to know, is that a good thing to take, or should I just get it out?
Yes. Okay. We generally think, everybody who does criminal law, we think an ACD is a wonderful thing. Because, well, we think anytime we keep the person out of jail, we did a wonderful thing. But ACD is adjournment and contemplation of dismissal. It means 6 months from now or 1 year from now, the case will be dismissed like it never happened. Which is, that's like going to trial and winning. It's wonderful. But the condition is you have to not get arrested during that time. So, you have to be careful. But it's generally thought to be a very good disposition.
Okay, what's the two libraries that you named? You said 34th and Madison and 86th?
34th and Madison is a library where the department store used to be. And, I'm sorry? Yes. The Altman used to be. 34th and Madison. And 87th Street, which is the old traffic court, where you got your licenses, is a civil courthouse. And there's a publicly accessible law library there. Somewhere upstairs, I don't know if it's second, third, fourth floor, but somewhere upstairs.
All right, thank you. No, we're at the end, dear brother. You might be able to corral some of the lawyers and ask them one-on-one. This is Attorney Bashir's book, Raw Law. Many of you heard the interview that he did with us on Sunday, this past Sunday on Harlem Community Radio, The Communicators. This book is on sale. I advised folks at the time of the interview that this book is a reference book. It's not written as a reference book, but when you get into it, it's a reference book regarding our young brothers and sisters who are out here. It is obvious, and this is what you and I have to convey. Not that anyone is unfair in terms of how the laws are being implemented or enforced, but that we have to tell our young brothers, no marijuana, no, do not carry contraband of any kind on your person. You have to tell them. If they don't pay attention to you, you are not guilty of their not paying attention to you. My mom said a hard head makes a sore behind. And we have to give those kind of adages or proverbs to our children. We must do that. We must do that. So the book is on sale, and of course Brother Bashir will autograph him and get the telephone number once again of Attorney Marshall, who is due here tonight. This is his card. The brother that sues the police for stop and frisk and all of those other kind of nuisances that they think they can get away with. I've enjoyed this evening. Brother Cornelius Ricks will close out. And
can I give one
quickie? Yes, sir.
A quickie. Two things. The book is for the public outside. It's $15. Here, there's going to be a special price of $12 unless you buy it from me. If I sell it to you, it's $115. But I will personally autograph it. It won't be my signature, but anyway. You want to try something interesting? I don't know if it'll work or not. As you see from my skin coloring, I just came back from a 3-week vacation in Aruba. And down there are police running around all over the place. Everywhere you turn, there's a police car, and they walk around in uniform. And as I walked by them, I would say, "Good morning, officer. Hello, good afternoon, officer." And they would look at me like I was out of my mind. I suggest to you and your friends and your neighbors and your 16 to 29-year-olds, when you see a uniformed police officer, not a cop, on the street, go as you walk by, say, "Hello, officer. Have a nice day. I hope you look what a beautiful sunshiny day. What a shame it's cold. Look, it's raining. How are you?" You will be amazed at how, when they see you again, they will not go.
Judge Steinberg, please. Yes, thank you, Judge Steinberg. I want to thank you for coming tonight. It's always a pleasure to you to come.
Thank you for having us.
You're welcome. It's always a pleasure for you to be here, Judge Steinberg. It's also a pleasure to be here. Also, Paul and Muhammad, I'm very interested in reading your book. And my brother, Leroy, I really appreciate you coming tonight and giving such a great session on hosting this event. But one of the things I want to say to you, one of the things that we talked about tonight was very important that you understand is that we're talking about the law library. One of the things we're talking about the law library was actually addressing issues. And one of the things I always say, if you call yourself an Afro-American, you call yourself an Afro-American, but you know nothing about America, you know nothing about the Constitution. You call yourself African, you know nothing about Africa. So one of the things that Malcolm always says, the best way to keep information from a Negro is put it in a book. And we think it's very important you understand the law library is something special for you to understand where you can go and address issues that's important to you within your community. I think that one of these we have to understand as a people, only with time we're going to get respect that we need is understanding who we are and understanding the Constitution within the United States. But I truly appreciate you coming tonight. We're going to be putting together other panels. It's going to be absolutely sensational. And I think the law library you're going to find to be very, very interesting. You're working on it. I'm going to thank you, Brother Leroy, to be probably the host of these programs, and we'll keep it going, and we hope that we get more participation of the community. In fact, this whole room should be filled to the top, especially dealing with addressing our issues as black folks in America. Thank you for coming. I really appreciate it. Bye-bye.